So in Illustrator, you can create 3D shapes using perspective tools, and it's really amazing what you can do. One thing you have to consider when you're doing this, though, is that you need to create the illusion of depth and lighting. So in Art 1, we would have talked about how different surfaces of a cube would have light striking different faces. So this edge of my cube is going to be darker than this edge. Here this edge is lighter than this edge. I've set this up using a gradient, and I created it as an overlay. So using transparency controls, this is a multiply effect that I put on top of these shapes. So before we can worry about doing a 3D shape, we need to give it some depth so that once we put them in those shapes, it's even more convincing of that illusion. So over here in our Illustrator palette, we've got a perspective tool. Some of you may have stumbled on this. It's a little messed up sometimes when you don't expect it, but here it's going to be a great thing for us. So you can edit your perspective grids depending on what you're using. Okay, I'm going to kind of go back to where I was. I kind of like that orientation. If I click on some of these controls, I can do even more crazy stuff, but I'm going to kind of leave it so that our cube basically lines up to look like the Kleenex box that I'm working towards. So here, if I click and hold on the tool, now I get my perspective. Okay. This little guy here is going to control how all this works together. So if I click on this face here, and then I click on this object. Previously I've set this up as a grouped object so that when I move this, everything moves all together. Okay. So now I'm going to come back here to this tool. I've got this face selected, and notice that it says, hold on, it says left grid. Okay, so when I click on this and I move this, check it out. So now let's zoom in and get it to fit this a little bit more. There we go. So now that's fit. Let's go back up. I'm going to zoom back out. And now we're going to change this face by clicking on the other grid. Okay? So now you'll notice that the arrow on our cursor has changed to the right side. So we're going to click this. We're going to move this down. Let's zoom in and line this up. I'm going to pick this far corner and align this, snap that into place, and we've covered most of the height and width. So now let's click out, Control 0 to get our full view, and here we're going to click on the horizontal grid, and now I can move this down to here. I'm going to zoom in. And I've created a box. So let's really zoom in tight and make sure. Okay, so here we need to adjust this edge. A little bit cleaner. I'm going to collect this edge, pull this guy down a little bit. Now let's come over here and check these edges. So here. Alright, so we haven't used the lasso tool yet in Illustrator, but let's check this out. We're going to come in here, we're going to draw a lasso around that, and I'm going to average these points. Object, arrange, transform, where's average? Shucks. Path, average, there it is. So let's move this out of the way and see what we get. How about that? So our corners are now lined up. Come back over here, that still looks good. Let's check this edge over here. I think we could probably do a little better here. So you can also hit Control A to average things, and everything should line up nicely. So now let's zoom back out, take a look at what we've got. So we joined everything up. If I come back to here, go down to my perspective grid, I can close this by clicking on the X. Let's see what we got. That looks pretty three-dimensional. What do you think? Pretty quick. It's a little confusing interface, but overall, notice how the extra time that I took to put the gradients in here really make it pop. Okay, so take a little bit of time, think about how you're going to set this up. It's a little bit crazy, but I think you guys can work through this. If you need help, obviously that's what I'm here for. So thanks for watching, and let's check out how we can do this in Photoshop next.